Hej everybody, välkommen tillbaka. Tack för sist. So today, last night's video was intense. I don't know how many of you have seen it. Well, I know how many have seen it, but if you're watching this, I don't know if you saw it, but it was way more intense than I thought it was going to be, retelling that story. It's been a really, really long time since I've even talked about that. I got some really cool comments on it actually, and somebody turned me on to a video on YouTube talking about a serial killer up in Canada that might have been the dude. I looked at the pictures and I was like, wow, that might be the guy, but it's so long ago. Anyway, new night, new video. Thought I'd do something not necessarily lighter, but definitely deeper, or not as heavy. That's what I meant. Or as, that I was worried that video was a bit of a downer, but it was just this. Once the story got back in my head, I had to tell it. So a lot of you that are watching this video know that I grew up in the Mormon church. My parents converted to the Mormon church when we lived in Norway. I was only a little over a year old when they converted. And so as far as I can remember, I was always Mormon growing up. I was baptized in the Lutheran church as a baby in Norway. I actually have a really cool silver plate and cup that my best-of-all grandma gave me for the date. It was, I think, so I was born in December of 63, and I think the baptism was in February of 64, and it's got the date stamped on it. It's pretty cool. But growing up in the church, you're constantly dealing with religion. I can't speak for other churches, but when you grow up in the Mormon church, it's not just you go to church on Sunday and that's it. At least not if you're in a very active family like I was. My parents were very into the church, always had callings. And so your life almost revolved around the church. I don't think it's like this anymore, but back then on Monday or Tuesday, we used to have what's called primary for the smaller kids, like grade school kids. And you'd go at, 5 o'clock after school. And then as it got a little older, I think it was Thursday nights, it was called Mutual. And it was just kind of a get together of, you'd get your own age group, boys and girls separately. And you would do different things. Actually, there were some really fun times there because I did scouting through that, went on scouting camps, lots of stuff like that. But like I said, I don't know how other religions are, but if your life revolves around it like that. I never thought of it that way when I was young. I didn't think of the Mormon church being so pervasive in my life, but it definitely, it was kind of over everything. Most of my friends were Mormon. I had non-Mormon friends too. The town I grew up in was probably close to a third Mormon. It was only 4,000 or 5,000 people in the whole town, but there were quite a few there because it's in southern Alberta, and if you're familiar with that area, Cardston, Alberta is only about an hour and a half from us, and that's where the Mormon temple is. So when the Mormons settled into southern Alberta, they kind of spread out to all these little towns not too far from there. So yeah, it was very much a part of our lives. I never really thought about it much. As a little kid, I've talked about this before, you get baptized when you're 8 and it's your choice, which is absurd. I've said it before. If I had said at 8 years old, I don't want to get baptized, my dad would have had a talk with me. We'd have got to the place where I wanted to get baptized. So I'm not a big fan of that, but I grew up with the concept of God. Now, in the Mormon church, I know it's not like this everywhere, and I know there are Christians and certain types of Christians that think this is blasphemy, and that's okay. You get to believe what you want to believe. I don't think it's a big deal, but in the Mormon church you grew up, where you're taught that there's God, Jesus Christ, and the Holy Ghost, Holy Spirit. They're three separate beings. I know there's the Trinity, and a lot of people just think that's all one being, and that's fine. If you believe that, you believe that. I've said it before, I have zero interest in religion. I had somebody comment on one of the videos a little while ago saying, I hope you find your way back. And while I appreciate the sentiment, and she was very nice about it, it's like, I don't want to find my way back. I found my way away. I like my life better without a religion in my life. And it's not, people that have asked me over the years, did you leave because it was hard to live that religion? Well, it's not an easy religion to live, especially as a young person. There's no premarital sex, there's no drinking, there's no smoking, none of that stuff. Even just fooling around when you're a teenager, that's a no-no, if you know what I'm talking about when I say fooling around. And so, yeah, it's kind of strict. And I even have some resentment from that, because when I was, say, 16 to 19 years old, I had a lot of guilt in my life, just from relatively minor things, indiscretions, and it just kind of, you did certain things, but the weight was always kind of on you, because, I was never sure as a kid, is this the true church? Is this the only true church on earth? That kind of stuff. They talk about it all the time, but I don't really think about it. I never really thought about it. But you go in for interviews quite often, and they ask you very personal, very detailed questions, especially about sexual things. And so, like I said, even just fooling around, a huge guilt trip was put on you as a young LDS kid. And when I say young, I'm not talking about like a 10-year-old. I'm talking about, 15, 16, 17, 18, that kind of thing. And looking back at that now, it does give me some resentment. There are things that are part of growing up and becoming a teenager and growing into adulthood that are completely natural. And, I always struggled with I know this is a bit of a meandering video, but it's kind of about growing up in the church and God and that kind of stuff. But shoot, I lost my train of thought there. But yeah, so, dang it. I wish I could rewind, but if I stop it now, then I got to piece the whole thing together later. So anyway, there was very in-depth interviews. Let's just put it that way. So when I went on a mission, I've mentioned this before, I lived the religion. I didn't necessarily believe 100%. There was a time there where I thought I was pretty sure. But a young mind is really easy to mold. Boy, I could go into that, go off on what's happening in schools and stuff these days, all the way from kindergarten to the universities. But speaking of molding young minds, but yeah, it was, I had some friends growing up that just didn't care. They did what any other normal Canadian/American teenager is going to do. And they never felt any guilt or worry about it. And I envied them, because I did some of those things, but I always felt guilt. And I especially worried that I would disappoint my dad or something. My dad was hardcore. And my dad's an awesome dude. If you met him, you'd be like, oh, he's just the nicest guy. Plus, he's 83 and he looks like he's 65. The guy doesn't age, but he's an amazing person, but he's very into the religion, and that meant being very into raising his kids to be obedient to those rules. And of course, I think all of us brothers did stuff we weren't supposed to do, just like any other kid. But growing up with the concept of God the way I did, that is not something that's left my life. When I left the church, I didn't leave God. and I don't think God left me. I pray almost every night. If I don't, it slipped my mind, or if it's a weekend, maybe I had too many drinks. But I pray, and I've talked about this in previous videos too. When I pray, I don't ask for like stuff for myself. I don't look at God as a genie. I do ask, please take care of my family, that kind of stuff. Not anything material ever, other than, I hope my body will hold up so I can do my job, so I can take care of my family, that kind of thing. So yeah, I mentioned a few videos ago, in the Mormon church, you have home teachers that come. I don't know what they call them now. I don't think they call them that, but it was usually two men that would come and visit once a month. And then there's also two women that would go visit the females individually. But when we moved to this new town we've been in now for 21 years, somebody got assigned to us, and he was hardcore, and he showed up every month. Sometimes he'd show up with his whole friggin' family, which was weird, but nice dude. I think they really wanted to be buddies. We weren't interested in that. You could just tell we were not socially compatible at all. But I mentioned how he kind of confronted me about not being in the church and believing, don't you want to be with your family forever, which really offended me. And unintentionally, I moved towards him like I was going to punch him or something. I wasn't going to, and I didn't, obviously, but I still get offended by that if somebody hints that, well, I've gotten comments on here that if you don't do this and you don't do this, then you can't go to heaven. You got to accept Jesus. You got to, everybody's got their own rules. I just don't have any interest in it. I have my own relationship, and I like the way it is. And when I'm talking to God, do I know he's listening? Do I even know for sure what God is? No, not really, but it does give me some sort of peace. And my wife is very similar, feels kind of the same way, and that's kind of how we raised our kids. So I'm not opposed to religion. Don't get me wrong. The only religions I'm opposed to are religions of hate, or that hurt people or kill people in the name of the religion. That's not for me. I'd say do your thing, but no, don't do your thing if it comes to something like that. But there's been odd religions over the years too. If you're old enough to remember. Jonestown, is that what it was called? Oh man, the guy's name just escaped me. The guy with Kool-Aid, and it's kind of a cult more than a religion. But you hear about things. There was the Gates of Heaven or something many years ago, where mass suicides for their religion / belief / cult. And I know there are some of you that think the Mormon Church is a cult. You're free to believe what you want. Some of you have sent me definitions of a cult, so I would know this is a cult. Well, I still don't agree with you. Things can be interpreted in 100 different ways. But yeah, when I think of cults, I think of, there's a bad connotation, a negative connotation to the word cult. People that lead a whole bunch of people to kill themselves, or lead them to do crazy things. Charles Manson and his group they were a cult. And they did horrible, evil things in his name, basically, because he said it. When I look at the Mormon Church, I do not see a cult. I see almost exclusively really good, nice people. And I've actually had tons of comments from active members on this channel here, and almost every one of them is just kind and nice and respectful. I don't have really anything bad to say about the members of that church. Are there some bad ones? Of course there are, but there's bad people in every walk of life, every religion, every company, anything you're a part of. There's going to be some bad people in it. But it's I love living in Utah. We have low crime. Families are mostly intact, which to me is a big deal. It's I think extremely important for kids especially, but that doesn't mean I look down my nose at somebody who's a single mother or a single father. Absolutely not. If anything, I look up to you. I think that it's amazing. But I think most people that are single fathers and mothers would probably agree too that it's better for the kids if there were two parents in the picture, and especially if they could get along. That's something I'll have to do a video about. My divorce. I talked about the dark times after my divorce and working my way through it, but the actual kind of nuts and bolts of it and how it worked and how my wife and my ex-wife meshed and her new husband and I and that kind of stuff. I could do a pretty long video on that. But anyway, so my main point for this video was, just because I left that church does not mean that I left God behind. And I appreciate those of you that reach out and say, I need to do this, and I need to go back, I need to accept Jesus, I need to do this and that. I do appreciate it. I think almost all of you are doing it out of kindness and looking out for me, which I appreciate. But there's no wiggle room here. I'm not fudging between going back and not going back. I made my decision years ago, and I'm very content and happy with it. So anyway, before I start rambling too much, I think I'll call it a night. About time to get some sleep. I gotta put in some long days the next 3 days, because Monday they say there's rain coming in again, so I need to get as much done as I can. But this is very cathartic for me too. I really enjoy that some of you are watching this, and sometimes a lot of you are watching this, and it's very cool. And the comments I really appreciate. And but it's good for me. I mean, I hope this is providing some entertainment to people, but excuse me, it's also providing something for me. I sit in this hotel room by myself night after night after night. This is night 17 or 18 in a row, and I've got another week anyway to go. So it's kind of nice to be talking to somebody, even though it's through a video. So I appreciate you letting me go on, and I hope you all have a beautiful night. I will try to do a video tomorrow night. I'm not sure what I'm doing. I might go play some poker tomorrow night, and then Saturday some people I met here invited me to a barbecue. So I'm excited about that. Anyway, have a fantastic night. Thank you for watching. Takk for denne gang. Vi snakkes igjen snart. I cannot wait. Norway is only, May, June, July, 4 months away. Less than 4 months. And heading back to my homeland for the first time in 15 years. It's been way too long. I can't wait to smell the smells and see the people and hear the language and just immerse myself in it. And I get to show my family. So I'm so excited. Have a great night, everybody. Thanks so much for watching. Peace, love.